I always go back to what is the goal? Well, the goal is to fix the problem, to learn from the problem, and make sure we're not doing it again, right? It's going to be really hard to achieve that goal if we're fighting. Hey everybody, welcome to the Leader Lab. This is Leadership Shorts, quick thoughts to help you level up your leadership. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners, and I'm joined as always by my partner in podcasting, Emily Grace Deal. Emily Grace Deal, what are we talking about today?
Well, when working as a team, it becomes really easy to blame someone when something goes wrong.
Yes.
Or they make a mistake. How does blame hurt teams?
How does blame hurt teams? And I think if you're a leader for any amount of time, you realize that most of your job is dealing with problems that are created, right? Things that popped up, mistakes that are made. How we process that and handle that matters deeply.
Yeah.
And this comes from a TED Talk that I watched from Michael Timms. He's a leadership organizational kind of consultant. And he talked about this idea, and this is what I found so fascinating about this, that blame causes the same fight or flight response as a physical assault.
Yeah.
So you screw up, and I'm like, why did you screw that up? So there's blame there. Your brain is processing that like I just punched you in the mouth.
Yeah.
That is so weird.
I'm gonna run or blame you back immediately.
Right, exactly. You're gonna fight back, or you're gonna get out of there. And it's funny how we have these interactions where you'll just have a bad interaction with somebody.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell just happened? We're both adults. How did this? Well, our brains are not quite working at that level, right? If I blame you, your brain is going, I just got assaulted.
Right.
That's different.
That's crazy.
That is crazy to understand how we work. And the other thing he talked about was the idea that our brain is naturally wired to blame the person closest to the problem.
Okay.
So whenever there is a problem that pops up, our brain defaults instantly to who is closest to it. Let's blame that person.
Oh, they're the one responsible,
They're
clearly.
the one responsible. So then we're going to go blame them. Well, then they're getting attacked, and they're going to respond in a very unhelpful way.
Right. And they probably already have plenty of shame on themselves for whatever had happened.
That's
so
the
you're just
interesting
piling
part.
it on.
It's funny how often I have teams that are highly driven people, highly responsible people. They are really hard on themselves. And then if a leader comes in and piles on that, you're right, it's really not helpful.
Yeah.
And we always talk about the idea that every word has weight as a leader. And so blame that comes from a leader has even more weight.
Right.
And really, I think that when a problem pops up, the goal is, I always go back to what is the goal? Well, the goal is to fix the problem, to learn from the problem, and make sure we're not doing it again, right? It's going to be really hard to achieve that goal if we're fighting. And if you're blaming, you're starting to fight.
Yeah. And that's not, I mean, you're not going to get anything positive out of that. There's not going to be any good interaction if we're just in the, let's immediately go to who's right, who's wrong.
Yes.
And then you're not moving forward in that.
No, you're not. You get stuck and mired in that, right? And I think the blame game kind of does keep teams stuck and ultimately does damage that can echo into the future, right? Now I'm scared to make a mistake because I got blamed last time. Well, now next time I make a mistake, I'm not going to come to you and own it openly and say, here's what I did. Here's what I learned. You know?
In an environment where it's not okay to make mistakes. We've talked about this. That's not good for anyone.
By the way, we need to link to that episode. We're going to link to both the TED Talk and the episode. We'll add that in the notes when we're done. Because we have a great episode about how to process mistakes consistently, some questions to ask. And really what you're trying to find is understanding. How did this happen? What can we learn? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And he has a question in there that is really helpful. So rather than walk in and going, this thing happened, what were you thinking? To walk in and ask the question, how may I have contributed to the problem?
Oh, that's good.
Because if you're a team, like there's contribution, right?
Right.
We talked off mic, like if you screw something up, maybe I didn't train you how to do it well.
Right. No matter like how small that piece may be, you can find somewhere to improve.
Yes.
And if we're all working to improve all the time, like that's a good thing. That's a good place to be in.
Yeah. You know, we talk about our definition of a thriving team is everyone's united in purpose, but the last two pieces, we champion healthy leadership and we are focused on growth and impact. And that growth piece of, hey, if we're learning from mistakes, we're growing. So let's value that. I think ownership is ultimately the solve for the blame game. If we are not worried about blaming, we're worried about owning. And as leaders, we always talk about the vulnerability to model it and say, you know what, here's how I think I contributed to this problem. what that does is give everybody else the permission to go, oh, this is a safe place to talk about that. So here's, hopefully they'll jump in and do the same.
Yeah, it's more of just a moment of curiosity. I mean, even when you make a mistake, like it's that moment of curiosity where you're like, oh, how did this happen?
Yes.
Like, so we can prevent it in the future, not so I can blame myself or you can blame me or whatever. If this can get in this terrible spot.
I love that you said curiosity, because that is a leadership superpower. If you can maintain curiosity in every situation, you are going to find so much insight for the future. And it is the curiosity, because one of the things he talked about was the idea that once you own something as a leader, if nobody else contributes, the hope is they do. But if they don't, you then have that moral authority to say, how might you have contributed to this? And that's not blaming, it's asking, it's understanding, it's the help me understand question.
Yeah, it's the curiosity is putting that why in there. Like what's going on? Let's look deeper and not just point fingers and say who's wrong.
And I love that it started with leadership vulnerability, that we have to lead the way and say, look, I contributed to this. Because it can be as simple as, hey, I didn't train you how to do that. It can be, hey, I gave you a task, but I didn't actually ask if you had the time to do it well. So I didn't give you margin. I didn't consider your schedule, and you rushed through it, and now here we are. And so that's on me. Like, I should think about that for the future. And so there's a lot to learn to not get mired in the blame game if we can really own things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's great. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk next steps, leaders. If you find yourself having some of these interactions where you default to blaming, stop and ask yourself that question. How may I have contributed to the problem? That starts you on this quest, this curiosity to really understand how something happened, because rarely is it black and white. Rarely is it one person flipped the wrong switch. Generally speaking, it's a highly complex reason that it happened, which means the solution is probably complex as well, and it takes ownership. That's what we're after. So lead the way with vulnerability, own what you can own, then let other people own things as well. If people want to send us problems or interesting TED Talks or things we can dissect, where do they send that to?
lab@forwardpartners.net.
lab@forwardpartners.net. If they want to find content where we're sharing things like this all the time on the socials, where do they find that?
@forwardpartner.
@forwardpartner. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Most importantly, LinkedIn. That's our favorite. That's how you're not supposed to have favorite kids. LinkedIn is my favorite kid.
Yes.
I hope my sons don't listen to this. All right, Emily, thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
John, thank you for producing. And thank y'all for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. You'll find video versions of every episode we do, plus our other show, Leading Thriving Cities. And we've got some special presentations coming up you are absolutely going to want to see. We will see you next time right here in the Leader Lab for Leadership Shorts.